Hello, Brubs. We're back with the After Midnight Ghost Book, a 1981 Franklin Watts book. Let me turn the light on here. Hopefully, the light doesn't turn off again because I've been charging, so hopefully, it's not too hot. I think this is 11th story. 11th story. Celia Dale, Moon Daisy. Let me grab this to prevent it from closing. Moon Daisy. We kept no end of state at Brettonham, pronounced Bretham. By those in the know, there must be more than 20 indoor servants, and heaven knows how many on the estate, not counting the home farm. In the autumn, when they have house parties for the shooting, and each guest brings his own servants, the place must be like a medieval court. And if the Prince and Princess of Wales graciously consent to drive over from Sandringham for a day's sport, my word, what splendor! Pronounce Bretham. Mind you, I've not seen this myself. I heard it from Miss Tiffin, the family's seamstress. She used to be the children's nurse, but now they are all grown up and away. The girls well married, the boys serving the empire at various far-flung outposts. She sits all day in one of the tower rooms, mending and altering and stitching. A little bent old woman with eyes as bright as a robin's. She knows everything about the family, but she tells only what redounds to their glory and credit. The bad things she keeps silent about, as I found in the end. I spent a fair bit of time with Miss Tiffin. She, like myself, had no fixed place in the household. She, by reason of age and long intimacy with the family, which made her now more than a servant, but of course much less than a friend, and I became, although I am as gently bred as Lord Bretham himself, probably more so, for he is only the third Baron, whereas my father could trace our line back at least the 17th to at least the 17th century. Yeoman, isn't it pronounced yeoman? Yeoman gentry who threw up scholars from time to time, but lacked the venality to make their way in the world. I was at Bretham, and that's what it said it was pronounced on the first page, only as an employee, filling the 3 summer months by cataloging Lord Bretham's library and family papers, and glad indeed to do so, for funds were exceedingly low until September, when I was to take up an appointment as junior master in a school for the sons of clergymen in Blackheath. The cataloging was tedious. The family's interests seemed, for their short but swift rise from mercantile obscurity, to have been almost entirely political and sporting. Their papers, accounts, and meticulously kept game books, their library political and theological. I worked each day alone in the library, my luncheon brought to me by the under parlor maid. Toka Funka Laka Laka Lexel. What's up, bros? The under parlor maid. Breakfast I took alone in the old schoolroom. Tea, usually with Miss Tiffin, once I discovered her existence. Dinner again alone in the schoolroom, unless the family found themselves a gentleman short at the dinner table, in which case, by means of a note brought to me by a footman, I would be bidden to make up the requisite number. To take in, it might be the spinster sister of the rector, themselves invited merely to fill the lower reaches of the table well below the salt, or some tongue-tied daughter of a local squire, invited to soften his reluctance to have his crops trampled by being shot over, even by Royal Highness. Why don't you sit there, buddy? I guess you gotta sit that way. On these occasions, arrayed in the formal black and white which had been my father's, I would make my way down the many staircases into the great hall with its fireplaces, banked with potted plants, to the drawing room, its floor a hazardous ice rink beneath costly rugs, its chandeliers a twinkle despite the evening sun, the better perhaps to display the satins and brocades, the jeweled dog collars, tiaras, parures, I don't know how that's spelled or is pronounced, parures, earrings as large, it seemed, as the chandeliers themselves that glittered on the ladies of the swells therein assembled. Ah, Mr. Fisher, his lordship would drawl agreeably if he happened to notice my arrival. How's the work progressing, ha? Mr. Fisher's our bookworm, ha? To whoever stood nearer est us. Right. Very well, sir, I think. Capital, capital, and that would be the end of it. Before dinner was announced, my lady would glide up to me, a rustle with taffeta, a twinkle with gems, tapping me on the arm with her fan. She would instruct me as to which hapless lady I was to take in and waft me to her side. She, poor creature, seldom knew who I was, and I not often she. Throughout the interminable meal, we would try and make conversation of a kind. When the ladies left us and the port circulated, I was in limbo. I did my best, but my neighbors soon gave me up as a bad job. Politics, racing, and risque stories did not interest me. Cigars make me feel ill, and I do not care for drink or drunkards. And when blessed release came, I did not go with the others to join the ladies, but made my way out through the billiard room onto the terrace, to breathe in the purity and silence of the night. No one would miss me. My function had been solely to fill an empty place. Bretham is very beautiful, especially on a fine summer night. The house stands foursquare, rather gray and bleak, on a platform backed by ancient trees. Behind the trees, beyond the park, lie the heath and woodlands over which the family shoot. But facing down a gentle slope of parkland, beyond which, many miles away, lies the sea, the mansion seems to survive limitless tranquility. Survey limitless tranquility, a harmony of grassland, trees, and lake. It is the lake which gives the grace and focus to the landscape, tree-edged in places, at others fringed with reeds, and in the day constantly a shimmer with duck and wildfowl of all kinds, clucking and preening, rising with a sharp rustle of wings, as though 100 umbrellas were suddenly opened, descending again with a long splashing wake to resettle wing and breast feathers, which feathers bestrew the grass and small beaches of the lakeside like confetti. It was my delight sometimes to gather them up into airy posies, as many different kinds as I could find, and take them to Miss Tiffin. Miss Tiffin. But at night the lake seemed spellbound, dark in the darkness, utterly still between its reeded banks, and yet never still, always stealthily alive with wind sounds, water sounds, the small movements of water rat and vole, or is that vole, the stirring breathing of birds that only seemed to sleep, muttering, chuckling, preening in the darkness, making their own silence in the secrecy of the night. I came out on to the side terrace nearest the lake that evening of the dinner, my lungs sour with cigar smoke, my ears with the blare and blather of the swells, my heart filled with bitter loneliness and, yes, self-pity. What was I doing here? Ignored or patronized by these moneyed boobies, I was a scholar. That was why I was here, recommended by my father's friend and lawyer when it was found my father had left nothing. The same recommendation would start me as a schoolmaster in 2 months' time, a prospect I dreaded, for although I am a scholar, it is a writer that I wish to make my name. It is as a writer that I wish to make my name. Was this to be my life? At 22, was I already doomed to drudgery and subservience? From the open windows of the mansion behind me, I could hear music, a woman singing, the tepid clatter of gloved applause. I went down the steps and across the grass to the lakeside. It was a still, clear night, a new moon steadfast in the sky. Sunk in my doleful thoughts, I wandered with bent head along the bank. The music fell away behind me, the blessed silence enshrouded me, calmed me, and then, pale in the starlight, I saw a girl standing at the edge of the reeds. My heart gave a thump, for she looked like a ghost standing there quite still by the water's edge, swathed in some pale material, gazing away from me down the far side of the lake. Then I realized that the paleness came from a bibbed, encompassing apron, her hair, pale in itself, partly covered by a frilled white cap. My heart resumed its normal beating, and I said jokingly, I took you for a ghost. She gave a start and turned her face towards me. I didn't hear you, sir. Did I frighten you? No, I don't frighten easy. Her voice was soft with a faint Norfolk twang. It's a fine night. Aye, she turned to look down the lake again, indifferent to me. Piqued, I stayed where I was. Are you from the house? Eh, she said. She faced me again. It was a pale, composed face, the mouth firm, the eyes steady. The wide starched bands on the shoulders of her apron seemed to reflect light. I'm one of the housemaids. I've not seen you about. You wouldn't. Her lack of sir stung me. I'm from the house, too, I said grandly. Ah, you must be else. You wouldn't be here. A faint smile touched her mouth. She was like no servant I had met yet, perhaps because we were out here in the night alone, away from the rigid hierarchy of the mansion. On impulse, I asked, What's your name? Daisy. Daisy, a moon daisy. If you like, sir. She was definitely smiling now, a soft, teasing smile. Do you often come here in the dark? Sometimes, when there's time. I also. I shall look for you again. Likely you will. She began to move away, the reeds hazing the pale glimmer of her garments. I called, Yes, you may be sure of it. Her voice had laughter in it. Sleep well, sir. And she was gone. She must have known I would not sleep well. Her voice had promise of it, but it was sleeplessness with pleasure in it. She haunted me. I kept seeing the glimmer of her face and figure, hearing the cool teasing of her voice. Her lack of servility piqued me. She knew I was a gentleman from my speech and manner. I had been dressed in evening togs, too, and as she had said, how else would I be here, strolling at ease by Bretham Lake of a summer evening after a grand dinner party? Where in the house did she work, I wondered. Why had I never seen her? But there were dozens of servants I never saw in that huge establishment. They were expertly trained to be invisible. I tried Miss Tiffin roundabout. It's such a grand household, ma'am. I've never seen the like. How many indoor servants would there be? How many housemaids, say? What's it to you, Mr. Fisher? Nothing. Curiosity. I thought I heard someone calling for Daisy in the upstairs corridor this morning. That's all. She gave me a sharp look. Daisy? No Daisy here, you can depend on that. And there should be no calling in the passages of Bretham House. What impudence! Well, she was old and seldom left her attic rooms. She would hardly know the names of all the staff. Each evening, if it were fine, and that summer it mostly was, I took to sauntering down to the lakeside after my dinner. I soon grew used to the darkness, and in any case the moon was waxing. I wandered round the lake, my eyes searching for the girl's pale figure, but for some nights I did not find her. Then there she was, standing in the same reeded place, looking away down the lake. Daisy, she turned. Ah, 'tis you, sir. Yes, I thought that might be. I was disconcerted. You did you? Why was that? That'd be telling. Let's say, because you wanted to. And you? She laughed, and I felt not only my blood, but my heart begin to pound. I'm only a servant, she said. That don't matter what I want. And what do you want? Oh, she let the word hang in the silence for a moment. I want to be like them, she nodded towards the house, where lights blaze from every window. I want to wear fine clothes and a jewel or so, and have someone else to do my washing and make my bed. I want to see London and look at the Queen. London's not much of a place. Her voice sharpened. You shouldn't say that. That's not what they say. You should say, 'tis a fine place, and you'll take me there. You should say, if I go with you to London, you'll give me fine clothes and a carriage, and make me a lady. Hello, Robs. I can't say that. It wouldn't be true. Yes, you must. 'Tis what they all say. You're no different. She began to move away. I am, Daisy. I am different. You're a gentleman, aren't you, from the house? Yes, but won't you take me to London, then? She was still leaving me, her voice teasing yet plaintive. Yes, yes, if I can, if you want, but why? That's right. That's what you must say. That's the way of it, sir. She was gone. Even now I cannot understand what madness seized me. I was distracted. I no longer knew whether I stood on my head or my heels. I seemed to have gone mad, to have become possessed by a girl I did not know, could never know save in impurity, a servant I had not even touched, a country girl of unknown background, shameless, unscrupulous, but magical, magnetic, all pervading. My dreams were full of her, hot, shameful, exhausting dreams. My day thoughts turned again and again to her from the dry cataloguing of the family's effects. I know now that I was in fact bewitched, but then it merely seemed to me that I had at last found in that barren waste of condescension and indifference someone who spoke and responded to me on equal terms. More, a lovely being who, who, who treated me as a woman treats a man, teasing, promising, tender, yet not quite as an equal, impudent though she was, she spoke to me as to a man of power and breeding, a swell who could take her up on a whim and translate this country wanton into a town dolly. I, who had no influence, no wealth, no home. It was this that turned my head, as though I were indeed a lord, her master. I was drunk with the power of it, and with her strange pale beauty, the provocation that weighted her voice and her words. I, s- I slipped out every evening down to the lake to see if she were there. The weather had turned, the trees stirred and threshed in the wind. The moon was obscured by cloud. She did not come. I walked through the quaggy edge of the lakeside, where the reeds were as high as my shoulders, but she was not there. In 10 days' time, my employment would be over. The archives in the library in order, listed in heavy leather tomes that no one, I judged, would ever glance at. I should be paid my fee by the steward. Perhaps her ladyship might condescend to wish me farewell, and his lordship to express satisfaction, and the promise of a reference should any of his acquaintances require my services, and I should be driven to the station in the dog cart with my portmanteau and return to London and some dreary lodging to sweat out the August heat before setting forth again to that unknown school whose general dog's body I would be. The hell's a dog's body? No, no. In a ruthless world, why should I not be ruthless too? Why should I not do as Daisy urged? Take her with me and enjoy, if only for a time, the solace of her charms. If she was so reckless as to trust herself to a man she hardly knew, I would be mad enough to accept that trust. London she wanted, and London she should have. Calm, rich nights came again. The winds blown out as I kept my vigil, I heard only the secret side of lakeside life. The moon, now full and tinged with gold, sailed huge in the huge sky. She was there. Her head was bare tonight, the pale hair shining in two smooth wings either side of her face, caught back in an old fashioned knot, a few tendrils escaping by her ears, infinitely seductive. She turned when I spoke her name. Ah, 'tis you. I knew you'd come. I've looked for you each night. Aye, that's a full moon now, sweetheart's time. Daisy, I took a step towards her along the narrow path. I leave next week, back to London. Her eyes glittered. You'll take me? Yes. Ah, she drew in her breath and smiled, not at me, but up into the glow of the moon. You want me bad, eh? You'll take me up and set me up, like all the gentlemen say, but you'll not get nothing till we're safe in London. I'm not to be tumbled under the trees and then left to watch you drive off in your carriage and pair. London's my price, my fine gentleman, nothing before. Her words shocked me, and yet, in their challenging impudence, I sensed a desperate fear. Despite the harshness of her manner, the provocation of her movements as she swayed a step or two away from me, there seemed terror and, yes, innocence. The face she turned to me as she moved was that of a knowing child, but one moved by bravado, fearful, uncertain, yet determined. I took a step or two after her, the path squelching beneath my feet. Daisy, I said, it's not like that. London's my price, she said, her voice like steel. You'll not see or touch before you've bought the goods. I'll have no gentleman's tricks from you. She had retreated further among the reeds, and I followed her. It's not like that, I said again. I'm not what you think. I'm not a swell. I'm not a guest up at the house. You're a gentleman, she repeated. Yes, but not as you mean. I'm not rich. I've no money save what I earn, and that's little enough, and I'm only a sort of a lackey up at the house, at work in the library. I'm not one of the family set. I'm no one. You must be. Her voice was uncertain now. You're up at the house in fine clothes and all, dining with all the nobs. You speak soft and fine, and you're hot for a servant girl, like all of them is. Daisy, no. You've mistaken, gravely mistaken. I'm not a knob. I'm no one. I'll take you to London. If you stay with me, I'll treat you with all the respect I can. But there's no carriage and no fine clothes, only an honest heart and no lies between us. I went further towards her, for I wanted to take her by the hand and let her see in my face that I spoke the truth, that we'd go together. I'd keep my word, but as comrades, lovers, I hoped in time, but without falsehood. But she shrank away before me, her face bewildered. No, she cried, that's not how 'tis. You're a gentleman, rich, and you want your will of me now, like a slut in a barn. That's all lies about going to London. You want me now and leave me, ruin me here and nothing to pay. That's how 'tis. That's how it always is. Daisy, no, I'll not touch you. I'm not what you think. I'm poor, Daisy, like you. I thrust nearer to her, though the reeds closed in on me, and I felt the mud oozing up through my thin shoes. The reeds rustled around me, and small sounds came from creatures disturbed by our presence. As I plunged towards her, she threw out her hands as though to fend me off, and her face, retreating before me, was whiter than ever in the steadfast beam of the moon. No, no, she cried, go back. That's wrong. That's all mazed and wrong. You're not the one it should be. You're like my Jed, my darling. Then she raised her face and her arms to the sky and cried in a voice so raw with loss and anguish that my heart went cold. They hung my darling. They hung my Jed. Go back, you're not the one. Go back, go back. I felt the lake water rise above my ankles, calves, knees. I blundered towards her, but she seemed always to recede before me, gliding backwards through the reeds that scratched and tore at my face and hands, her face a mask of fear, and it seemed pity, her pale hands waving me back as she fled, faded, hung above the water like a shimmering mist as I tripped and fell face downward in the knotted weeds and reeds and quagmire of the lakeside, felt the water close over me, tasted the mud in my mouth, heard her voice echoing, go back, you're not the one. A woodman found me as he went to work soon after the sun rose. I was lying in the mud at the lake's edge, half submerged, but with my face and head somehow pulled clear of the water. I was unconscious, and they got a hurdle and carried me back to the house, where I gather my condition caused something of a stir. Vaguely I was aware of bustle around my bedside, voices, even her ladyship's, and someone saying with great emphasis, "This is the third, I tell you." I drifted and dozed, at last returned to myself at evening, the curtains drawn, a lamp shaded on the dressing table, and old Miss Tiffin seated at my bedside, her gnarled hands in her lap, her eyes shut. I stirred, and at once her lids were open, and her bright old eyes regarded me. "Ah," she said, "you returned to us. How do you feel?" "Very hot. Naturally, you have 3 blankets and a coverlet and a hot brick at your feet. I will remove that now, but you have suffered a severe chill, lying out all night in the lake." She rose and darted her arm under the bedclothes at my feet to extract the flannel wrapped warmer. She placed it on the floor, reseated herself, and told me how I had been discovered. The reeds trampled down around me as though the lake. When she had done, she folded her hands in her lap and silently, "And now how you got there." I told her, shame in many ways, though my story was I kept nothing back. Weakened alike by exposure and by emotion, I let the whole short but overwhelming record of my encounters with Daisy flood out of me, trying to convey to Miss Tiffin the strange magnetism of that moonlit creature and the bitter loneliness in myself which caused my, as I saw it now, incredible response. Miss Tiffin listened in silence, nodding her lace capped head now and then. When I had done, she nodded again. "Yes," she said, "it is as I thought." After a moment, I said, "I wish no harm to come to Daisy. She was not to blame." "No," she said, "it is the world that is to blame. Lust and ambition and the power of high personages are to blame." She nodded twice. She should not be blamed for wanting to better herself. "She'll not be dismissed?" She gave me a queer look. "Young man," she said, "I will tell you, for no one else in this house will. They fear the scandal. Daisy Hunter was murdered down by the lake some 60 years ago." As I gasped, she laid a hand firmly on mine. "Stay still. I was the under nursery maid then, newly in service, 14 years of age. We were friends of the sort. His lordship's father was the lord then. Daisy had a sweetheart, Jed Barber, a gamekeeper. She loved him, I'm sure, but she was eager to better herself and him, hot in the flesh as country girls are, not wise in the head. One of the old lord's friends caught sight of her, a foreign highness. She took his fancy and she led him on. She was found drowned on the lakeside one full moon, with marks on her throat, and it was Jed that found her, and Jed they hanged for it. She was silent for a moment, her eyes looking into the past. Then she gave my hand a little pat again. "There were another 2 found there over the years, gentlemen, friends of his lordship, drowned in the mud at full moon. No one knew how or why. Their deaths were hushed up, of course. They could find no scapegoat for them as they had for Daisy's murder. He didn't hang, you see. It was all covered up by the family. Wealth can do that. Poor Jed got the blame and was hanged for it. Yes, that's the way it was. But the others? I think, she said, and her voice was almost tender. I think poor Daisy wanted revenge. It was Jed she loved, despite her grand ideas. We were bits of girls together. I knew her mind. She's had revenge, and no one's lived to say how. But you've lived. Why? Why me? She drew a handkerchief out from the pocket she kept hung under her skirt and blew her nose. Her eyes were brighter than ever, I thought, with tears. She saw that you weren't a villain, but just a silly young man, not a lord of creation like those others had been, to take what you like and the rest of us all keep silence. But a simple, silly young person like herself and Jed, you touched her heart even though she's dead. She blew her nose again and stuffed the handkerchief back under her skirts. Pity wipes out revenge. Daisy's gone now, I think. Amen, I said. She covered my hand with hers. Amen, God rest their souls. And mine, I should have echoed, for the loss and loveliness haunt me to this day. Well, at least that was a decent story. I mean, is it a ghost story? I mean, I guess it is because they made it one. All right. Next time it will be The Black Ghost of St. Ellen by James Aldridge. Moon Daisy. Who wrote this? Celia Dale. Moon Daisy. All right, Bobs, that's all.